So the big question is this: how do ordinary people like us that weren't born into money create true financial freedom, take back control of our lives, and live a life full of purpose, meaning, and fulfillment? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Join me and follow along as I learn, apply, and share the strategies that the wealthy know and use that the rest of us weren't taught to create true financial freedom. My name is David Bell, and welcome to Pocket Mastermind. Cooper, welcome to the Pocket Mastermind podcast. How's it going?
Going well, David. Thanks for having me.
No, you're welcome. So let's learn a little bit about who Cooper Krauss is before we dive into anything else more specific. Let's learn a bit about it. Who's the guy sitting opposite me and the listeners listening to right now?
Yeah, sitting opposite you across the pond right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very log opposite.
Yeah. Again, my name is Cooper Krauss. I sit in Kansas City, Missouri, and I'm from a town originally called St. Joe, which is about an hour north of Kansas City. So about 60, 70,000 people, pretty small town, and kind of the first in my family to step outside of that city and move to a metro. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I like it. It's, it was kind of something I always wanted to do growing up, just because so I've got 6 siblings, so a pretty big family. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so my dad and literally all of my brothers, which is 4, they all work at the same factory in St. Joe, for Johnson Controls, making batteries, which is a great job for all of them. And then my mom and my sister, they both are waitresses at the same restaurant. So just growing up, seeing that, I was like,
it's a proper family style town then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's one of those ones where, like, if you don't know somebody in that town, it's almost weird just because it's, you just know everybody. So, but with that, I just, at some point I was like, man, I respect them for what they do, and they've, provided a good life for me, but I just wanted to switch it up a little bit. So Kansas City has allowed me to do that pretty well. So yeah, I've been in sales for about 6.5 years now. Got my first sales job. I was actually serving tables downtown Kansas City, and one of the guys I was waiting on was like, "Hey man, you kept that pretty organized and you had good customer service. Do you want to come sell insurance?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Nice. I would love to get out of working at a restaurant." So that's kind of how it all started. And now I'm running global sales at Full Scale, which is a software development services company built specifically for entrepreneurs. So it's actually a really cool story. Our 2 founders, they've built and sold tech companies for over a decade. They're both Matt. So it's Matt DeCourcy is the CEO.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah, the 2 Matts. Yep. So Matt DeCourcy is the CEO, and he's kind of the business founder. So he's just an absolute hustler. Like he's not somebody who went to college or anything like that, graduated from college. He just understands how to run, scale, and grow businesses. So he got a lot of his notoriety because he wrote a book called $1 Million Bedroom, which was the story about how he started a business, maxed out an $8,000 credit card, started a business in his spare bedroom, and that turned into a multi-million-dollar business. But in that book, he also interviewed a guy named Matt Watson, who he started building an automotive CRM tool and platform in his basement when he was working full-time somewhere else.
Oh, wow.
And he grew that, built that. Like his first employee was his dad. So I mean, it was like bootstrap, true startup hustle. And then in 2012, he sold that for $150 million.
Wow.
So both of these guys have great experience with scaling companies from early stage to successful exit. And something they did along the way on both sides was they utilized remote development resources to scale quickly, and of course to control costs. Mm-hmm. And so they kept noticing issues in communication and obviously time zones and resource reliability. Like did the person that I just hire, is that actually the person that's doing the development, or are they shopping that out to their cousin or friend or sibling or whatever it may be? So they built a model that really eliminates all those issues. And so we've got a team of 200 developers down in Cebu City. We've been around for a little over 2 years and have grown really quickly from, of course, no developers to 200 in just 2 years. So most of our clients are startups. We understand the ups and downs that go along with being an entrepreneur. And so our model allows for, scaling up quickly, scaling down quickly, but having thoroughly vetted and dedicated full-time resources when you need them. So yeah, it's been fun. I'm actually the first sales hire for the company. So I've been able to come in and see a lot of what it's like to kind of work for something that's similar to a startup, which has been fun. So
yeah, you get to set the agenda, right? You can
yeah, which is daunting and exciting.
Yeah,
It's
true.
Yeah, it's definitely got its ups and it's definitely got its challenges for sure.
And so what kind of services are you developing?
The significant portion of it is mobile and web applications, SaaS platforms.
Mm-hmm.
We've dabbled into, we've got a small machine learning and AI team. So we've done some of that work. I wouldn't say that it's yet a specialty, but I would caution anyone on, saying that anybody's got a really strong expertise in AI yet. We've got some really great people on our team that can do some solid work. And we've actually completed a few ML projects internally for us. So I've got to see some of that work. And so I think we kind of look at it like we're going to test it out on ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
let our guys get through the growing pains of messing up these algorithms until they really figure it out. And so by the time that we build them out to clients, they know what they're doing. So we've kind of taken that burden on internally, and now they're well experienced and can do some great work. So yeah, it's mobile apps, web apps, SaaS platforms, really complex web applications, some machine learning, AI. We've done a few like AR, VR projects, but again, not a specialty for us. So a significant portion is web and mobile apps.
And how do you tend to work with other businesses? Do you provide, is it like commission the software and then, or the platform or whatever it is they're buying from you and then you hand it over, or is there a service element? Is it ongoing support, that kind of stuff? Because I think for anyone listening now who maybe is running a startup and they're looking to start scaling and looking for additional services, whether it be apps or CRM system or whatever it is, and it'd be good to understand what's the process if you're in those shoes.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's really just a matter of, it's kind of like you're hiring us as your software development team. So we would never build a product and then go try to sell it to somebody. We would also never say, hey, give us the specs, give us all the tech specs. We'll go away for 3 months and build it and hand it back to you. That's not really our model. Our service model is called guided development. So really what that means is that our client's involvement is really crucial in the development, because essentially what happens is we work with CTOs, CEOs, founders usually, and we understand what type of skill set and what type of people they need, but they've already decided on the tech stack, the architecture, the wireframes, and we're coming in and essentially our developers are bolting onto their existing team on a full-time dedicated basis and executing that complex development project. So it's sort of like loan staff from accounting firms. They're all permanent employees of Full Scale, salary, PTO, benefits, and then we just make sure to align our developers with client projects that are aligned with their specialty. So we're not being reactive in terms of a client reaches out and says, hey, we need 3 Python developers, and then we go find those. We go find developers that we know make sense for Full Scale's model, and then we go and we're very specific in our outreach of who we work with. In fact, it's actually, as a salesperson, it killed me when I first joined, because our CEO, Matt DeCourcy, he's very, very comfortable with walking away from business if it's not the perfect fit for Full Scale. Like, he has no problem saying no. which is the salesperson is like, I want to say yes to every single deal, right? But he's really taught me that it actually saves us a lot of time and actually generates more revenue for the company by saying no to the companies that don't make sense. So, for example, generally speaking, if a firm does not have, or a company doesn't have technical in-house leadership like a CTO, VP of engineering, we usually don't. We almost will not say okay to that, just because, again, our developers aren't making those advisory level decisions around tech stack and architecture. So we want our client to be able to do that. So that, along with, we don't do like 2-week or 6-week engagements. We're looking at 6 months plus to come in and really be a part of the team. So yeah, that's kind of our service model, is long-term engagements. You bring on a couple developers, and you can scale up if you need to. You can scale down if you need to, but we bolt onto your team and make sure you get your product out to market.
So you kind of got one of my next question was going to be, and you kind of covered it there, is kind of what kind of size organizations do you tend to work with? And I suppose at the smaller end, it makes absolute sense. You need somebody with that technical expertise, and who's going to be validating, because there's nothing worse than developing something based off of a design document or a brief that the brief was flawed in the first place, and then you make it and they say, well, this doesn't work, and you say, well, that's what you asked us to produce. And you've got this
exactly
horror. I've seen that a million times. I've seen it a million times, even with internal development teams, right? We'll make a business readiness design document, and then it gets produced and it doesn't work, and you're like, well, why doesn't it work? And then, well, this is what you asked us to build, and it, the pain that you would go through as on a client relationship would be tough.
I need to bring you on some sales calls with me, man, because that's, I mean, I hear that all the time, and it's like, well, that's the reason we don't do it, is because, like, when you sign, before I joined Fullscale, I was with companies where we wrote SOWs, and the SOWs were accurate 0% of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
There's always,
you don't know what you don't know, do you, at the briefing stage?
Yeah. Right? So we're never going to say, hey, we're going to build you this product with these features in this amount of time, and it's going to cost this amount of money. We just don't do that, because it just never works out to be accurate. So we just say, hey, here's the team of developers that you need, and it's a flat monthly fee because they're full-time dedicated resources. But how you manage them on a day-to-day basis it depends on, like, you seem like a great guy, but I don't know how well you manage the team, right? So that's why we're just like, this is your team to manage. We've got development managers that are assigned to each project that have monthly check-ins with our clients and things like that. But there's just so much variability in a project that we're not going to put our name on, hey, yeah, we'll build you an MVP in 3 months. It's like, okay, well, how do you define an MVP? And then if it's like, well, the way that you've defined MVP, that's almost a fully robust product that's going to take more than 3 months. So there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, I think when most people say MVP, in their mind, what they really want is the full working model.
Exactly. Yeah. Like MVP, you scroll and click and then nothing happens. Yeah.
It doesn't. There's no way that's what people really, really want. And
right.
What about and do you service outside of the US? Are you predominantly US based, or?
Predominantly US based, but we do have a couple. We actually have 2 clients in the UK. We've got 3 or 4 in Australia, and I'm hoping to get 1 in Japan pretty soon. So hopefully that comes together. We're working through that right now. So obviously time zones would line up great with that, with our developers in the Philippines. So yeah, we're definitely a global company, but the majority of our clients sit in the US.
Mm-hmm. It tends to make sense if that's where you're based. That's where the conversations tend to happen. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I may have skipped over your question a little bit about who we service. So yeah, it is generally startups, but again, startups that we that have some stability. We generally aren't working with day one startups that are haven't even written a line of code yet. We generally don't go that route. We like to have some foundation before our team joins, because it just helps with success rates. So
they tend to be businesses that already have product in market, or something along those lines. They are actually a functioning business.
Yeah, generating revenue would,
Yeah.
but you can be a startup for a long time and still generate plenty of revenue, So we're the ideal customer is less than 100 employees, recently funded, innovative technology, trying to shift the landscape of their industry, because we promise our developers fun projects. That's how we get such good developers from frankly our competition down there. And then we say no to clients until we find those fun engagements, and then it works out well.
What kind of projects have you worked on? What would you say has been some of the more interesting projects that you've been involved with?
Yeah, so one of our clients, the platform that he has that we built for him or with him it's an e-learning web and mobile platform that it gamifies learning through hip hop for usually like inner city kids or less privileged kids that can use this platform to just help with education. So it's targeted towards youth. And so we kind of built that platform and that storyline from scratch. There's a character line that our team worked on as well, because we do have some creative services that we offer. It's just not a core part of our business, but we've got some designers and animators. And so that was something that we helped him build from scratch. We actually have about 17, I think we own 17% of the company. And he went through Techstars Atlanta and got a $3 million investment. So that was pretty cool to see that. So yeah, it's Healthy Hip Hop is the name of the platform. And so it's like gamified learning through hip hop. Yeah.
What a great idea that is.
Yeah. And he's a Kansas City entrepreneur. So we were excited to work with him and back him. And so, yeah, so I don't know if you it sounds like you took a look at our website. So I don't know if you saw, there was a couple companies that we have equity in, and that comes through development services. So it's kind of like we get this amount of equity in exchange for this amount of development services. So for the right startups, our founders are interested in that type of conversation, which is obviously appealing to most people that are trying to get a company off the ground.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely worth. I think if you're looking at the longer game, and startups are generally not exactly swimming in cash quite often. So
Right.
if you can make an exchange in equity, you get you end up with, you guys are even more vested in the outcome of the business, and
100%.
they don't have to scrummage around for more cash they're going to have to pay back at some point. So it seems like a great idea.
Yeah.
Hybrid VC /
exactly. Yeah.
Organization. Yeah.
When they told me they did that, I was like, wow. I mean, that's really, it's one of those things where obviously it'll benefit us as an organization, but it really is super helpful for somebody who just doesn't have enough cash, but maybe has the vision and the idea, and maybe already has something put together to where they can see like, okay, this makes a lot of sense to pour some resources into. So, and for anyone who is listening, and maybe even you, if you're interested in it, the Mats, they actually co-host a podcast called The Startup Hustle, and it's fantastic for entrepreneurs. I mean, we bring on other founders, CEOs, CTOs each week to just talk about their company, their experience, their passion, what it's like to win, lose, fall flat on your face, what it's like to go get funding and how much that sucks. Like it covers everything of what it's really like to be an entrepreneur. And we're generally top 25 for entrepreneurship category on Apple. We get about 75,000 downloads a month. So they've done a great job scaling that podcast, just like they have with their businesses. So they've created a really cool ecosystem for startups to get a lot of a lot of information from. So definitely something for entrepreneurs to check out.
Yeah, definitely well worth having a listen. What do you reckon?
Yeah.
Do you see this model that you guys operate in expanding into the future, and seeing actually even larger businesses potentially effectively outsourcing their technical development to businesses like yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially with everything that's happened in the last 6 or 7 months, the idea that you wanted your development team together in the same room, that has kind of gone away, and people know that really great work can get done without having to be in the same room. And so then now you look at the fact that having developers in the Philippines is extremely cost effective, and you don't have to compromise on quality. In fact, I think there's a really good chance that they may be better than your. I mean, there's always that chance, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
because the way that we look at it is, so if we're talking to a U.S. customer and they're trying to determine whether or not to go with us, really the way that it looks, the way that it plays out is your U.S. based developer better be twice as fast or twice as good, or else it just makes sense to go with us. And the chances are they probably aren't. Like, because we look at, we don't really hire very green developers. It's usually 5 to 6 years or more, because that's kind of that space where, and if anybody technical is listening, they'll understand that 5 to 6 year mark is where they go from being a developer into an engineer. Mm-hmm. And so that's really where we focus at, so they can be autonomous and take direction and not have a lot of hand holding and have minimal ramp up time. And so that's kind of where we focus at. And so if we look at, a US based developer, again, it's twice as fast or twice as good, or else it really makes sense to look at our model. And so now that everybody's working remote and we really don't know what the future of that looks like, I think our model makes a whole lot of sense. And there are definitely some big companies that I know of that have already gone that route. And I just think that the Philippines makes maybe even more sense than some other regions of the world, just due to the fact that their second language in Cebu City, Philippines, is English. So almost, something we almost never have a complaint about is communication. So I think it's going to grow. I think, something else that we run into sometimes is, hey, I really do like your model. Obviously, it would save us a ton of money, but I don't feel right about taking jobs away from my local market. We hear that, and it's like, is that negatively impacting my local economy? And the answer is, yeah, it is impacting it, but positively, because, for example, again, so say we've got a startup in Kansas City, and we're able to provide them with really strong developers at half the price, then that money that they're not spending on a local developer, they can invest that back into the business, or they have, more personal money to spend on in Kansas City on other businesses. So there are a lot of upsides to utilizing remote development resources outside of the fact that it just saves you money.
It's true. And I think sometimes we can get distracted looking at one element. So like you say, the development element, are we taking roles out, outside of the States for that? Mm-hmm. Maybe, but like you say, as the business grows, other support functions are more and more likely to be local. So
yep,
those roles wouldn't exist if the business wasn't able to grow in the first place. And you've got to look at the bigger picture in that scenario. And on a whole, UK, US, we've got to look at our skill sets as individuals anyway, and be a step ahead. Mm. Kind of what's the next thing that we need to be producing as service to our own GDP production effectively, right? It's kind of, because you see all of these different services that we were leading the way and that are now going into different countries. So we need to find what's the next thing, where's the value that we offer locally
to them. And to them. I mean, the world's just getting smaller and smaller, so we can't pretend like we can just stay in these little lines forever.
We'll all go back to farming. That'll solve the problem. Give everybody an acre of land, and you can grow what you could grow, and we'll just do trade.
We'll see what you can do with an acre.
Exactly. Times have moved on, and we've got to take our own responsibility for how we individually operate within a globalized world economy. It's easy to say, it's not how it used to be, but it's never going to be how it used to be. It's always going to move, and we got to change times.
Especially now. I mean, there's going to be, I think it's just a new normal now for a while, right? So yeah.
Well, you look at the Facebook, Twitter, or the large these companies that had large campuses in San Francisco that are very expensive, and now saying, well, you can now be remote. That opens the border effectively for people to come and work for Facebook from India, from anywhere in the world, right? That you don't have to be stuck in the Bay Area anymore. You don't have to go and live in and pay California tax. And so
exactly.
So where it was reserved for people to be in certain locations, it's definitely changing.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think that's good for people who maybe I'll just say that maybe they were kind of older executives who, they're like, we made money a certain way and that's how we're always gonna. And then this quite literally forced them to realize, oh, we don't need to be in the office. Really, like it is not a requirement, and people are working just fine, or maybe even more effectively because they're not in the office. They get to get a coffee and they stop and talk for 20, 25 minutes, which is a great thing. And you should always do that. But the truth is it just doesn't happen as much at home. Now, of course, there could be distractions with kids and pets and life stuff, but I've talked to a lot of people that feel like they're more effective working from home.
Less tired generally. So many people commute at least an hour each way.
Oh my God.
I feel like I commute
so much more time.
Yeah. And so so many people I've spoken to that got at least 2 hours a day back, some of them 3 or 4. And you think that's 4 hours a day. Some people are commuting 2 hours each way to work, plus the cost. It's a huge amount. And I don't think
that's a great point. Yeah.
So many, and I think until this happened, people kind of just sort of unconsciously taught themselves into it's okay, and probably the commute incrementally increased. Right, it probably was an hour, then it became an hour and a half, then it became 2.
Yeah,
and before you know it, you're sat in traffic or on a train for 4 hours a day, and you don't realize what an impact it has until it goes away.
Yeah, and then it's like, all right, I'm never going back to that. So if my company does require, I'm going somewhere else, and then now that company maybe loses a great employee because they know it's just not necessary, and they can add more value for the company by not getting those extra 2 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Or working.
Exactly. You can do all sorts of stuff. All of those, all of the side hustles that people didn't have time to do, you've now suddenly got time to do them.
Absolutely.
Exercise that you didn't have time to do, you can now do. And also, if you've got kids, some people that didn't get to really see the kids during the week get to see the kids now. They see them in the morning, they see them in the evening, and it's for that angle. What's been going on has its upsides. There's obviously plenty of downsides with being everyone having their faces covered and all the rest of it.
Right.
But how that will play out, I guess, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it feels weird to say, but there are definitely silver linings in this. And I mean, even from a business perspective for us, again, it feels a little brash to say, but there were always going to be winners and losers of this. Yeah. And again, because we're built on a remote working basis and we're cost effective and our developers are pretty badass, it's been great for us. So, it's almost like some people had to get forced into realizing this is a really good option. And that's just the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are some businesses have been formed during this process that are 100% remote. They didn't even exist until this happened, and this has opened up the doorway for fully remote businesses to appear.
E-learning is blowing up.
Yeah,
huge. Of course, right? Yeah, I mean, it's exploding. We've had a lot of companies reach out that are just like, we just are getting so many client requests. We have no bandwidth. Actually, we have a customer in London who he and his wife are in business together, and they had a in-person kind of dance class, and it was she had programs. She's a world-class dancer, so she had programs, and then this happened, and then they pivoted and they're like, we need to build an online platform so we can keep our students and they can continue to grow. So we're helping them through that now, and they sit in London. But it's just one of those things where they're like, all right, we have to pivot quickly if we're going to survive. And they realized it's that we've got to dump money into this now so we can be safe later. And then if things ever transition back, then their students will have that option of, as everybody should with work and with whatever, with college or any type of class you might be taking. Now they'll have that option of, I can go in person when it makes sense, or whenever I have too much stuff going on and I just need to knock out a class when I can, and they can do that online. So again, from their perspective, it's like, this is actually better for our business in the long run, because we're gonna gain customers we never would have in general, because now we can be a global company because we sit on the internet, opposed to just in the UK.
Particularly businesses like that I find very interesting, because historically they were really capped by the number of hours in the day and the people in the area, and now suddenly your reach has become global, and with recorded content you're able to deliver it 24/7. It's like a complete, if you can get your head around that, then the opportunity is huge. And like you say, you still have the ability to, in the future, where it makes sense for people to be able to come to your location, and maybe they want the extra tuition for something like that, they can get that in person, and that can be a service of its own. But your standalone service becomes the digital version of what you do. And I see quite a few businesses starting to move in that direction.
What are the universities in London doing in terms of online classes versus kids going to campus? Are they back at school, or?
It varies. It very much varies. So for the top unis, for example, Oxford have in-person lectures. Cambridge is all online, I believe, until 2020, I think it's probably end of summer 2021, if not 2022. Gotcha. Which in itself, right, is if you are paying the fees to go to Oxford or Cambridge, or in the States, Harvard or somewhere like that, and it's all online, you're suddenly thinking, is it worth the $50,000 or whatever it is a year to go to Harvard to do everything online? You're not getting the experience. You get the Harvard
experience.
You get the Harvard certificate type thing, right? But you don't get any of the frat stuff. You don't get any of the you just don't get the environment. And I think part of the lure of the top universities around the world is actually the other people that are there, their backgrounds, the connections that you make. You look
the
at
network.
The
network. The network is that's why parents want their kids to go. Because let's be honest, there are certain professions where it'll always add a ton of value to have a Harvard law degree or whatever it may be. But the truth is, like, that's becoming less and less important to people who are just looking for, because you can get somebody that's got a Harvard degree that is going to be less effective than somebody who's got a degree from the University of Missouri.
Yeah.
I mean, that's becoming less. There are some pretty big tech companies that are starting to do away with, hey, you need to have a degree in computer science. They give you a really difficult coding test, and if you test well, like if you can code, I don't care if you haven't sat in a college classroom. Like, that doesn't matter at all. So
that's the way I personally, that's the way I believe it should be. Is that a certificate does not mean that you fully understand, or that you have an aptitude, or you are the right fit for anything. It just because you were able to go through a particular system does not mean you're the best person for that role.
Yeah, honestly, I think the biggest compliment of a college degree is just the fact that, okay, you started something and you stuck with it and finished it. That should be attractive to employers. I don't know how attractive if you've got a business management degree like that. I don't know what that means. Like, can you solve problems, and do you even want to? Like, do you have any, like, do you care at all? I think but those things are obviously a little bit harder to identify, and, in the way that we interview people traditionally too. So, there's a lot to be done there, a lot of ground to cover there. But yeah, to your point, I mean, it's going to be harder and harder to sell somebody on going to Harvard if they don't get to interact with with those people and those connections on a day-to-day basis. Yeah.
And that I think opens up the doorway to more businesses providing different types of education in different fields, more applied subjects than traditional subjects. Things like digital marketing is such a big thing at the moment. Understanding specific skills in shorter form courses for actual roles that exist now, rather than going and learning English, for example, and then going into a marketing role or something like that. The two things don't quite line up. And I think out of pretty much everyone I've ever spoken to that's gone through a university system, hardly anyone is in a field that has any relevance to the degree that they did in the first place. So you think, well, was it worth spending those 3 or 4 years racking up all that debt, or could you actually shortcutted the system and gone directly in through another route? Probably is the answer. And I think I think what I see is the Gen Zs are seem to be a bit more entrepreneurial and bucking the trend than the millennial generation that got sold the dream of what you need is a college degree. That's where you get a good job. And then they all came out of university and found that actually there's huge competition and there aren't many good jobs, and you end up doing a year-long internship or something for no pay to try and get your foot in the door. So I think
which is crazy that was ever a thing. Like just working for I always thought that was weird. But yeah, I mean, and it's so affordable to start a business now. I mean, you really can strike up an LLC for $100.
Yeah.
And if you're hungry and you've got some aptitude and some problem solving skills, and if you're a Gen Z who's grown up, with technology, and you can put together some type of social, some marketing services, you might not blow up or become the next huge agency, but you can at least get some entrepreneurial experience, which is going to be way more attractive and way more valuable if you do go work for somebody at some point than being I'm a great example of. I went to college, and honestly, growing up my whole life, and even at college, I was not a good student because it wasn't that important to me. I knew I needed to get it to have the piece of paper, but I didn't have a super high GPA. I wasn't really involved in anything. I just knew I needed to get that piece of paper. But that has, like, what I, as a salesperson, it's not related to a degree at all.
No.
I mean, you've got to put in a lot of work, and there are some really technical aspects of sales in terms of moving a prospect through the sales process, doing it ethically, but also building a ton of value to where whenever you get to the point of asking for the close, you don't even really have to ask for it because it just makes sense. Mm-hmm. That there's a lot of technical aspects that go into that, and there are definitely sales courses and sales universities online that can help you get there. But that doesn't come with a general university 4-year degree.
No.
And honestly, half of it is sitting down at your desk every day and work and just putting in the work, and picking up the phone and not be scared to get told no 99 times, so then you make one sale. I mean, all that, like, none of that is taught in university. And so I'm a perfect example of a millennial who racked up debt to get a 4-year degree to get a job to pay for the 4-year degree for however long. So
it sounds ridiculous when you say it that way, doesn't it?
But that's exactly what we did, So I think it's going to be. So I get married in about 26 days, and thank you. Yeah, and so we're still probably 4 years out from even having our first child, but we're very curious to see what the education system will even look like by the time our kid is 18, just because I don't think it's going to be go to school for 4 years and go get a job. Mm-hmm. I think that'll be an option, but I don't know if that'll be the requirement for a lot of companies.
It's definitely, I think it didn't last particularly long. It's kind of, I would say, even it's really kind of a 90s, 2000s type thing that this really.
That's a good point. Yeah.
70s and 80s, not that many people went to university. Having a college degree was still kind of a small minority, and then it suddenly became everyone should go. And I think it just became a money maker for the big unis, to be fair.
My gosh.
Do you know about the
Yeah, for
fortune?
sure.
So I don't think it was about education
Absolutely.
at all, but it was. We all got hoodwinked into it. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was and so before we just move on to kind of some of the standard questions that I want to go through, be interesting to get your what's it like now? Obviously, you're the one that kind of I would use the word escaped from the hometown, and when what's it like for the friends and the family and that kind of thing, for you being the one that went away? What's it like when you go back?
I mean, they're incredibly proud and supportive. I mean, whenever I was in college, I definitely got crap for being a college boy, like when I come back home. But I mean, they were always extremely, extremely happy and supportive. It was nothing but love and support from them. So, it's definitely interesting to see just the differences and kind of how you want to establish your life based off of. It's kind of like picking pieces of. There are certain things that what I grew up with, I absolutely, loved certain aspects and things that my parents taught me. But then there are other things where it's like, okay, that's what not to do. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of just mash all that together whenever you're trying to, establish your own life. But it's all good when I go back home.
I'm always fascinated by how different people approach different circumstances. Like you say, a whole load of family that work for the same business, but then you do something different, and it's that kind of thing really fascinates me. How everyone, the brothers go, we're gonna go down this route. That's what everyone's doing, and then you've gone, no, I'm gonna do something different, and that kind of stuff really fascinates me.
Well, I think my family is actually a pretty good. I would almost want to say case study on the nature nurture argument, because so of my 6 siblings, 4 of them are step siblings, so we don't share any biological DNA at all, but we're all pretty similar in age. So it's just interesting because some of us had so I've got 3 stepbrothers, and we're all within like a 3-year range. Mm-hmm. And so we had really the same nurture, like we had really the same environment growing up. And we all did, we're all very different people, obviously. And then I went and did something different. But then my older brother, he's 33. I'm 28. He's 33, or 34 actually now. And so obviously we have the same DNA, but he had a pretty significantly different environment or nurture growing up because he was so much older than me. But still ended up doing the same. They kind of ended up in the same spot as my 3 stepbrothers, because they all work together. So it's kind of crazy to see, like that didn't really line up at all, and then they ended up in the same place. And then I kind of spit out down here to Kansas City. But I did. I mean, truth is, like growing up, I think I was always really attracted to people who are highly motivated and successful. And when I was growing up, I played traveling basketball, and that just exposed me to people and lives. Like I would stay with people on the weekends for these traveling tournaments. And quite frankly, some of these families were much more affluent than me growing up. I mean, I always had what I needed, but it came at the cost of comfortability for my parents a lot. I mean, 6 kids, right? So, it was definitely very financially strapped growing up. And so when I started to see that and get exposed to that, I was like, I need to get, like, just whatever it takes to get to that kind of space. That's where I need to get. And I mean, it came with a lot of college debt, and, I had a very unorthodox undergrad. Like usually it's 4 years. Mm-hmm. I did 6 years because I worked full time for most of it. But that put me in a spot to, I got that first sales job I mentioned off the serving floor. And then, a couple more sales jobs. And then, when I was 26, I got hired as, director, at a consulting firm. And I was the youngest person to ever get hired at the director level. So it was just, I just have always been in that space where it's kind of like what you aim at is what you see. So
Mm-hmm.
even if you fall short of what you're aiming at, it's still going to put you in a pretty good spot. So that's kind of how I've tried to establish myself here in Kansas City, and just kind of change the dynamic of, because I've got nieces and nephews, and I want them to see like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have no problem. Like I respect the hell out of my parents and my family, and honestly, I've even thought like, actually, is what they're doing, is that actually more impactful on the, because they're actually building something, right? Like they're physically putting things together that help the economy.
Yeah.
And I'm building software, I'm selling the building of software, which is certainly the way the world's going. But I've even had that conversation with my dad, like, you actually might be doing more, especially whenever I was at my previous company, I was doing M&A transactions. So I was like, I'm just making companies bigger, and who knows if that's good. So,
yeah, who knows if
anyway.
anything, who knows if anything of any of us are doing is any good in the long run.
Yeah.
You could tell
So,
you're nuts.
so I just wanted to show my family that there are other options. So, yeah, it's just something that I'm pretty obsessed with on a daily basis, is how do I drive this forward and get really, really comfortable, not because I want to make a crap ton of money, but like that, for me, the money is a symbol of me, like I'm doing something right. Like if I'm doing well financially, that's because I'm doing my job right and helping other people.
It's a great example. You know, your exposure came from doing the basketball and traveling around.
Yep.
But this is why I believe it's so important to read books and to look outside, because that's where the horizons appear, right? If you only live within your, within a certain space mentally and physically, then that's going to be the experience, and you don't know what else is on the other side, right? It's a bit like flat Earth. You know, if people used to think the world was flat because they didn't know anything else, right? And we look at it now and think how ridiculous, but when you've only got one perspective, you can't fly, and at best you can sail, but no one's going to go too far in case they fall off the edge. Do you know? But and I think we're very lucky, and now we've got access to the internet. We've got great books, so many books that people that have been out adventuring and come back, metaphorically speaking, and written, that we can now expose ourselves to and know that there's other ways, and we don't, if we want to choose to stay where we are, all good, but
at least know that there's
absolutely and then
and I think
you've been quite determined after that point, once you saw another way, that became the vision, and the picture in your head was something different, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's so much value to be gained from obviously reading books as a whole is really beneficial for a multitude of reasons, but I mean, just even the little nuggets of that can shape or even shift your mindset in terms of how you think about things. Like, so for example, as a salesperson, I think most people naturally as they're growing up in sales are inclined to, we've got the best this for this price, where it's all like about the features of the product or the service. And then you get some experience and you learn it's not about features, it's about the benefit and the value that the product produces. And so what made me realize that is there's an old school sales guy named Zig Ziglar, and he's been dead for a while now, but he made his, he was really, really famous, and he wrote a lot of great books. And he had this line in this book, and it was like, nobody wants braces, everybody wants straight teeth.
This is true. And
so it's just little things like that where I'm like, oh my gosh, like and it changed the way that I talk to my customers now, which is better for them. Like it's not, and then ultimately it's better for me, but it's better for them. And I would have never, like, who knows, whenever I would have come across something like that just clicked for me. That is just like, once you stop, it just made me realize, like, stop focusing. If you stop focusing on the money, like your commission check, if you don't focus on that, they'll actually be bigger, like that's really how it works. And it takes a while, and you have to get exposed to a bunch of stuff opposed to just to, staying right here and making a bunch of cold calls and things like that. There's so much more to it, and you just don't get the opportunity to teach yourself that if you don't do stuff that you don't want to do. Like, quite frankly, I never want to sit down and read. I don't want to. Like, I'd rather not do anything, probably.
Exactly.
I'd rather,
human condition, isn't it? Where the human wants
Yeah.
to be lazy and watch Netflix. That's what we're built for.
Exactly. Yeah. Or I'd just rather like keep actually working that, because it feels productive.
Yeah.
It's like, if you stop and read, like, you can really gain some value from that.
Yeah. The famous Jim Rohn quote was, "Work harder on yourself than you do on your job," and for very good reason. Because
I like that.
The more skills you develop, the more harder you work on you, and the more skills that you're able to develop, you'll perform better in whatever job you're doing. You'll be able to, like, that one line from Zig Ziglar enables you to think customer problem and how do you solve that problem, rather than what peg you're going to shove into the hole. And I think that's the important part, is really trying to focus on the. Look at Jeff Bezos is a great example. Amazon isn't, look at the money that company generates, but it's not set out to generate the revenue. It says, right, okay, what's the problem customer has? Right, how do we solve it? And then the next one, then the next one, and they make it so damn easy that we spend all of our money with them.
Yeah,
because they're so focused on solving pain points for customers. They want to it's so frictionless that it becomes the default for spending money. The money comes as a result.
Gosh. You just slide to pay, and it's just,
yeah,
it's over. Yeah,
you get to the point where you don't even look anywhere else. You go, oh yeah, I can get it tomorrow, free delivery, and I haven't got to enter my card number. I'm not even going to see if it's cheaper somewhere else.
Yeah, and I almost feel inclined to buy from them because of how good they are. I'm like, you know what? Kudos to you for figuring out exactly how I feel before you ever met me.
So true. Right, we are pushing up against the time. So what I'm going to do is go through the standard questions for you and get your take on some of these, and then we'll come on to where people can track you down a bit. The first question is, do you have a morning routine of any sort? And if you do, what does it look like?
Absolutely. 5 a.m. wake up, go to the gym. And actually, right now, my fiance and I are at an apartment, and our gym is just down the parking lot, essentially. So right now, part of my routine is when I wake up and I'm walking from our apartment building to the gym, I kind of go from, I go through, Friday morning, the day before our wedding, through Sunday, which we're going to do like a Sunday morning brunch after the wedding. And I just walk through that because it's fun to visualize and think about. I mean, we're excited to get married. So that's what I'm doing right now. And just kind of sets my tone for the whole day of honestly just being happy, because it's easy to get happy about that. Yeah. So wake up, walk to the gym, think about that, work out, come back, cook breakfast. And then while I'm cooking breakfast, I usually do a few like tedious tasks, like clean up my email or respond to a few things that I know I don't want to do when I'm trying to get real work done. And then, so I'll do that and then hop in the shower. And usually in the shower, I'm thinking through like 4 or 5 things that I really want to accomplish for the day. My to-do list is always like 25 things, but then it's kind of like, all right, what's impactful versus what's important, like what's actually going to, for me, leading the sales org, it's like, what's going to drive me closest to closing our next opportunity. Yeah. I mean, that's really what I've got to think about. As well as making sure that our process is global. So that's the morning routine is definitely, nice. I mean, the gym, if I don't wake up and go to the gym, I even told Paige this last week, I kind of beat myself up all day because I feel so much better if I wake up and go to the gym.
You also, I find if you have a morning routine where something like that's part of it, and if you don't do it, you feel like you've kind of given in to something in the rest of the day, right? So it's definitely hold yourself accountable to that. And I also like the habit stacking effectively, so you're able to then use you're kind of multitasking what otherwise would be dead time, which is useful, because lots of people say, I haven't got time to do this and do that, but actually there's lots of tasks that we do that you could do something else concurrently when it's straightforward stuff. So that's good. 3 books that you'd recommend and why?
all these. So so two of them are related to sales. So I mentioned Zig Ziglar. So his prodigy, I like to think about him as his prodigy, is Jeb Blount, or Jeb Blunt. It's spelled like Blount. He wrote a book called Fanatical Prospecting, and it's awesome. It's obviously it's about outbound prospecting and just the mixture of how you put together, especially now with LinkedIn, how you put together just a really healthy mixture of outbound prospecting to build familiarity and trust with ideal customers. It's done a lot for me and how I think about talking to customers at the beginning of the sales conversation to try to get them to feel good about interacting with me. So that's a great book. The second one is more on the the back half of the sales process. It's called Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play by Mahan Khalsa. It's a pretty well known. I think it's pretty well known. It's been around for a while, and it's the kind of the solution selling approach or the consultative approach where it's like, hey, we don't have to work together. If this makes sense, let's work together. If not, no hard feelings. We'll both respectfully move on. And he's just very good at cutting through. Like he made me realize that a lot of my stuff I was saying a lot of stuff in my sales conversations that I just didn't need to say. Like it was just me fluffing up the sales conversation because I was, a young salesperson. You're just trying to sound like you know what you're talking about. And the reality is, like, you don't need to tell them what you know. You just need to listen to them and say a little bit. And so he just did a lot for me. Yeah. He just did a lot for me in just keeping it, just cutting the fat off of sales conversations. So those two, and then I'm going to go way left field with this just because it's a really fun book. There's a book called The Mafia and the Machine. And the reason I want to talk about this book is because a lot of people don't know how important Kansas City was to organized crime expanding. And I just got a huge affinity for like mafia stuff. And Kansas City was like, it was a part of the original group of organized crime in the U.S. Like we were a hotbed for organized crime at one point, like back in during the Great Depression. Like there was a guy named Tom Pendergrass he was a councilman, got elected to office, and he ran a couple different arms of the mafia, ran 24 saloons during Prohibition. And at one point he had handpicked like 124 of 136 police officers on staff. So it's just a book about Kansas City Mafia, and it's absolutely fascinating. So yeah, it's called The Mafia and the Machine. So that's kind of way left field, but it's a really fun read.
Good, I like that. 3 people you'd recommend following or listening to?
He's pretty mainstream, but I still really like him. Simon Sinek. He's great about leadership. Yeah, he's got the start with why, leaders eat last type thing. I really like him. There's a guy named, and I might butcher his last name. His name's Tom, I think it's Bilu, or yes. Bilu.
Bilu, yeah. From
Impact Theory. Yeah. So I think he's great about mindset, and he's just a good example of like, he's shown real footage and real pictures of, he used to be an absolute chump, and he'd say that, like, he'll tell you that, like, he used to be a bum. And now he sold a company for over $1 billion. Yeah. So those 2 guys, and then a third person to follow. Let's see here. That's a good question. Honestly, I mean, I might be a little bit biased, but I really think that my CEO is a pretty good guy to follow. I mean, he doesn't have a following like Tom or Simon, but I mean, again, he's a dude who, he doesn't have a college degree. He's built and sold companies a couple times that were multi-million-dollar companies. He's just an absolute hustler. He actually wrote a book. I think I mentioned earlier, $1 Million Bedroom. And he wrote another book called Balance Me. And it's about, work-life balance and how it's not really 2 separate things. If you're an entrepreneur, it's figuring out how to make it all one thing that makes sense. And they were both Amazon bestsellers. So I think I'm going to go with Matt, and I'm not just blowing smoke. I think he's a pretty solid guy to follow.
I'm gonna have a look at the millionaire bedroom. That sounds interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
3 good habits or disciplines that you've adopted, and what's been good about them?
Definitely exercise. So I mentioned I grew up playing basketball. So I was always in shape. I played basketball all year round. So I didn't even know what it was like to be out of shape. So I didn't realize how much it sucks. And then my freshman year of college, I played basketball at a small college here in the U.S. And I just shattered my foot one day at practice, and I was on crutches for about 6 months. And that was the first time in my life where I was out of shape. And so getting back into shape was awful. And you just feel like crap when you're not in shape, but you don't I didn't know that because I'd never not been in shape. And so for just stress relief and clarity, and just feeling like when you're walking, like your legs just feel better, your torso feels, it's just like, you just feel more confident. So, exercise, reading is, I mean, because think about if you just read for 30 minutes a day, literally about anything. I don't care if you have a book or just an article, or if it's Mafia in the Machine, but just think about the cumulative impact of reading for 30 minutes a day. Think if you read 30 minutes a day for 6 months, like opposed to watching an episode of The Office, which, by the way, I'm guilty that I love The Office, but it's like, if you just read 30 minutes a day, you will know so much more, even if it's just from a vocabulary standpoint and like a context standpoint, you gain so much. So, exercise, reading, and a third one, I would just do. It's not even like a specific activity, just something that makes you uncomfortable. Because if you can kind of train yourself to, when you do something uncomfortable or something you're like, for example, like this type of thing used to make me really, really nervous. Like I used to get nervous before podcasts or conversations that I knew people might hear, or like getting on stage in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do it enough, and when you get in that spot where you start feeling a little bit of anxiety, and you kind of turn that into, no, I'm just excited, opposed to, oh crap, it's like, if you can get, but you have to like recognize you're having that thought, and then tell yourself, you not like train yourself on, no, I'm just pumped about this. Like I'm excited to go share my experience, opposed to like, oh, I wonder what people are going to think if I say something wrong or something like that. So I think the third thing is just whatever you can do to get really uncomfortable. It kind of goes back to just, opening your horizons a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's easy to shy away from the discomfort and the fear, but everything, the famous line, everything we want is on the other side of fear, is absolutely true. And we've all got different fears and different self-beliefs and limitations that we need to push through. And the more you do it, the more normal it becomes. And yeah, I completely agree with that.
Well, the crazy thing is that it's just made up.
Yeah, it is. It's all it's all these stories that we've created for ourselves.
That's what's crazy. Like you just made that up. That's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, it is unbelievably. It's just all of these contributing factors through your life that go to create the stories that we tell ourselves, and then we believe them. And then when someone says, "Oh, you can tell yourself a different story," you go, "I can't fool myself." You have done up till now, so absolutely you can. 3 tools or systems, apps, or anything like that you use all the time that you think are really good and you probably couldn't live without.
Audible for sure. I mean, that's like, when we talk about doing multiple things at once. I mean, I'm always listening to a book when I'm working out, which my fiance thinks I'm a psycho for doing that, because she's like, I need to listen to music till I get pumped to go work out. But I'll just listen to books or podcasts.
Nice.
So Audible, honestly, man, for me, in a sales position, I spend a lot of my time in Salesforce, and it ends up being a life organizer for me, because especially working for, somewhat of a startup, like it's not a 9 to 5. And I mean, sales isn't a 9 to 5 ever, no matter who you work for. so I mean, Salesforce actually keeps me really organized on actually being effective in my day. Um, I just think it's whatever works for you on having a short to-do list of things that you can actually accomplish. So from a system standpoint, I don't even like my to-do list. I still do on paper.
I find that easier too as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I split it in terms of, I mentioned earlier, but what's impactful versus what's important, because there are certain things that I feel like might be important, but impactful is, and also that impactful to-do list is not just what's impactful for full scale. Like, planning a wedding right now, there are things that I weave that right into my workday. And so I think whatever system I don't like using apps for that. I don't know why, I just don't. So I do it on paper, and it's, again, on your urgent, if you have more than 5 things, you probably are lying to yourself. Like, you don't need to get that, like, you don't have 12 urgent things. And if you do, you need to take a day off work.
Yeah.
And
you're not going to get them done anyway, are you?
Yeah. Like, think about all the to-do things that just transfer over day after day. Those are stuff that, like, finish. Yeah, take a Saturday morning and knock it out in an hour, but don't worry about those during the week, because it's obviously not that important if you're just moving them from Tuesday to Wednesday's to-do list.
So true.
Yeah.
The final question is, if you had 1 hour with anybody, dead or alive, who would that person be?
Oh, for as common as this question is, I've actually never thought about it.
I know. And the thing is, I ask it so often that I do think about it a lot. And thankfully, I don't have to choose, because the list is so long. I don't know how I would do it. But.
Yeah. Man, that's a really good question. There are a lot of options. I think I've got maybe a little bit of a weird one. I think I would actually. Oh wait, no, I would probably do Richard Dawkins.
Interesting. Why?
Yeah, he shattered my entire, which is a good thing. He shattered my entire perspective on life. Like, but it was such a great, and not even that I, adopt all of his beliefs. He just made me think about life differently. He was so polar opposite from how I thought, but he presented things in a way that, for people who disagree with his beliefs, you still can gain a lot of value from his. And so I think I'd be interested to, number one, like, everybody has their own personal convictions, and you would love if as many people as agree with you. And he did a really good job of making me see his perspective. And so it's like, okay, how do you formulate your conversations in a way that pull people in? Because I want to get really good at effective communication. And then secondly, I just think he's a genius. He was a genius. And so, or is a genius. I think I'm thinking of Christopher Hitchens. He passed away. I think Richard Dawkins is still hanging around.
I think Dawkins is still around.
Yeah. I just think I would love to just sit down and talk with him for hours. So that's my best one off the top. If I think of a better one, my first initial reaction was Michael Jordan, but that's just because I grew up obsessed with him. So.
Yeah. I think I've become more obsessed with Michael Jordan in recent times than I probably was even in the 90s when he was playing. But probably because, when I grew up through the 90s, basketball wasn't on that much over here, right? Because it's not quite like it was. It's not quite like it is now, where the NBA is on all the time globally. Yep. It was still growing back then, and Michael Jordan was one of the forces behind the fact that of the NBA growing like it did, because he was so marketable. So I watched Game Changers, not Game Changers, sorry, The Last Dance.
The Last Dance,
yeah, and I watched that a couple of times, and it's so good. His mindset was something else.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. He's an example of you kind of have to give into a level of psychosis if you really want to be like that guy.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get to be you don't get to be normal and sane all the time if you want to be the best in the world. Like, that guy was a maniac, but I mean, he's a fascinating person for sure.
I think it was his power not to live in the future and in the past was one of the greatest things. And I think if
That's
anyone,
a great way to put it.
If anyone watches that thing and takes anything away from it, is the fact he did not worry about making mistakes, and he didn't relive the mistakes over and over again. He focused on what he could control there and then, and sometimes he took extra control because he didn't have the trust in other people. But that's I think the single thing that made the biggest difference was his ability to be in the moment, in the now, and focus on that 100%. That made such a difference. And then since he retired, and bearing in mind his salary was big for the time compared to now was pretty small, and and now he's got he's worth a couple of billion. His mindset hasn't gone away. Do you know?
No. Whereas
a lot of people leave sports and that's the only thing they know, but he's clearly driven in everything that he does.
Yeah. I mean, he's just watching those the little things of like before the games when he was playing those little games with like his security. He was constantly
the coins. Yeah.
Yeah. He's constantly competing. He just wanted to beat everybody.
Yeah.
Which, he went into the right line of work and he beat everybody.
Yeah. It was unbelievable. Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
Right, before we wrap up, let everyone know where if they want to get a hold of you or want to hear more about Full Scale, then where they can find out more information.
Yeah, LinkedIn is really the best spot for all of us. So, just Cooper Krauss on LinkedIn. Full Scale is a LinkedIn page, and then again, the Startup Hustle podcast. We've got a LinkedIn page. It's a great little ecosystem. Again, Matt, they co-host the main show, but we also have a Startup Hustle network, and underneath of that is a few hosts. They have weekly shows. We have one that's focused on e-commerce. We have a guy named Andrew who runs a company called Marknology, and he's built a lot of e-commerce brands and done a lot of Amazon selling. So he hosts a show. We've got a woman who runs a nonprofit female entrepreneurship organization here in Kansas City. She runs a show and brings on women entrepreneurs. So we've got a little network, and so it's really a great variety, but it's all related to entrepreneurship and the startup hustle.
Nice, really good. Yeah, I recommend checking all that out, and we'll make sure we've got links once this goes out, links out to everything. So thank you very much for giving up your time, and for everyone who's listened, thank you very much. And if you've like I say, if you want to check it out, we'll make sure we've got links, and remember to kind of follow and like, share, do all of the good stuff. Of the good stuff. Help us spread the word. And until next time, thank you very much. Cheers, Cooper.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening to this conversation. If you enjoyed it and you'd like to hear more similar episodes, head over to pocketmastermind.com, where you'll also find the links mentioned in this conversation. And if you haven't done so already, please leave us a review. It will really help us to get our message out and let more people know about these episodes. So leave us a review, leave us a rating, hit the subscribe button, and please share with your friends. Until next time, thank you again for listening.